Ghost towns abandoned yet far from empty linger, as eerie reminders of lives once lived, whispers of forgotten laughter, and shadows of former glory. These desolate places, silent and still, hold an irresistible allure, drawing us toward their crumbling buildings and overgrown streets. They fascinate precisely because they unsettle. We sense the spirits of the past roaming freely, trapped between worlds. Visitors speak of hearing phantom footsteps echoing down empty corridors, glimpsing spectral figures behind cracked windows, or feeling invisible eyes watching their every move. In these abandoned towns, memories persist, blurring the boundary between history and haunting. Join us on a chilling journey through places where time stands still, and the veil between the living and the departed wears dangerously thin. Number 1. Bodhi, California, USA. In the remote hills of the eastern Sierra Nevada lies Bodhi, California, a frozen fragment of the Wild West, preserved in a state of arrested decay. Once a bustling gold mining town, Bodhi was home to over 0 people in the late 1800s, a place of gunfights, brothels, and saloons where fortunes rose and lives fell in the blink of an eye. Now, its dusty streets are silent, its buildings boarded and broken, left to the wind and the spirits that never moved on. They say Bodhi is cursed, not in the way of legends whispered around campfires, but in a tangible, lingering way. Visitors who dare to pocket even the smallest artifact, a nail, a rock, a shard of glass, soon find themselves plagued by misfortune, lost jobs, illness, accidents. Letters sent back to the Bodhi Museum from across the world beg for forgiveness, hoping that returning the stolen item will lift the unseen weight. The staff keep these letters, dozens of them, each one a testament to the town's eerie hold on those who cross it. Wander through Bodhi's skeleton streets, and you might feel it too, that prickling sensation at the back of your neck, the stillness that presses in just a little too tightly. Some visitors report hearing faint piano music drifting from the old homes where no living soul resides. Others claim to have seen a young girl staring out from the window of the Mendocini house, her face pale, her eyes hollow. Staff have spoken of toys moving on their own, of beds inexplicably mussed, and footsteps that echo across the floorboards when no one is there. Doors open and close on windless days, shadows slip past the corners of your vision, cameras malfunction. The air, even in daylight, carries a quiet tension as if the town itself remembers everything, as if it's watching. Despite its decay, Bodhi is not truly abandoned. Something lingers in the brittle air and dust-covered rooms, a presence that isn't just memory, but manifestation. Perhaps it's the violent past of the town, the murders, the betrayals, the sudden deaths that has left these spiritual fingerprints behind. Or perhaps Bodhi has become something more than a relic. A place where history loops endlessly. A place the dead refuse to leave. Whether you believe in curses or not, one thing is certain. Bodhi is not just a museum of wood and rust. It is a haunted frontier, a ghost town in every chilling sense of the word. Number 2. Pripyat, Ukraine. Pripyat is a city suspended in time, its streets overtaken by nature, its windows staring blankly into the void. Once a thriving Soviet community built to house the workers of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, it was evacuated in a single day in 1986 after reactor number 4 unleashed a cloud of radioactive horror into the sky. Families left behind toys, dishes still on tables, books open mid-sentence. The city never woke again. But some say not everyone left. Those who enter Pripyat today often speak in hushed tones afterward, recounting things that can't be explained. Ghostly figures glimpse through cracked windows, some tall and faceless, others small and childlike. In schools, echoing laughter drifts through hallways lined with dust-covered desks and peeling murals. In the iconic amusement park, The rusted Ferris wheel creaks in the wind, but sometimes it doesn't take the wind to make it move. Visitors swear it turns ever so slightly, as if still waiting to delight children who will never return. At night, the silence deepens, yet the emptiness feels alive. Flashlights flicker, and shadows grow long. Paranormal investigators speak of hearing voices speaking in Russian, whispering numbers, dates, or unintelligible cries. Some claim to hear the sharp ring of a school bell or the distorted crackle of Soviet-era broadcasts playing through dead speakers. One explorer described standing in the middle of the city square, only to hear footsteps approaching fast, then stopping right behind him. When he turned, nothing was there, but his Geiger counter screamed. The buildings, especially the hospital, the school, and the cultural center, seemed to carry a particular energy, thick and oppressive. Lights have been spotted glowing faintly in abandoned apartments, sometimes pulsing like a heartbeat. No electricity has flowed through Pripyat's veins in decades. Theories abound: residual energy, spiritual trauma, or echoes caught in the radioactive ether. Some believe the disaster didn't just destroy a city, it opened something deeper than fallout and silence. There are stories of a dark figure seen standing in the upper floors of the hospital, its outline barely distinguishable but unmistakably human. It watches, unmoving, as visitors pass by below. Another tale tells of a woman in a white dress seen wandering the city's edge, calling for her child. She fades into the trees, always just beyond reach. Drone footage has occasionally captured movement shapes, darting between buildings that vanish upon closer inspection. Pripyat is more than a nuclear ghost town. It's a place where sorrow, panic, and loss were frozen in place, where fear left a permanent stain on the soil. Whatever remains there, be it spirit, shadow, or memory still, roams the concrete corridors and hollow apartments. Pripyat was evacuated, yes, but it was never truly emptied. Number 3. Kmanskop, Namibia. Kmanskop rises like a mirage from the Namibian desert, consumed by sand, half frozen in the opulence of its diamond rush past. In the early 1900s, it was a thriving German mining town, a jewel in the dust where fortunes were made, and champagne flowed more freely than water. The buildings were extravagant for their time: theaters, ballrooms, a hospital with the first X-ray machine in the southern hemisphere. But greed, like all things, dried up. When richer diamond deposits were discovered farther south, Kmanskop was left to the sand. Now, the dunes roll through rooms like slow waves, reclaiming each floor, each hallway, each forgotten life. But the desert hasn't taken everything. Something still moves in Kmanskop. Visitors walking through the skeletal remains of the mansion-lined streets often report the soft, unmistakable sound of footsteps crunching through sandonly to find they are alone. Photographers, drawn by the surreal beauty of the decaying interiors, tell of figures caught in their frames, vague silhouettes standing in doorways, watching. Some appear headless. Others fade as quickly as they appeared. There are no locals to play tricks here, only wind, dust, and whatever remains. The hospital, long abandoned, carries a darker weight. The air inside is heavy, thick with the feeling of being watched. Many speak of whispers low, hoarse voices that flutter just behind the ears. One traveler described a voice calling her name over and over until she fled the building. The ballroom, where miners and their families once danced under chandeliers, now echoes with music that isn't there. A haunting waltz drifts through sand-filled corridors, soft and sad, as if the past hasn't yet realized it's over. There are tales of spectral minersmen in old workwear, seen trudging through the sand with empty gazes, vanishing before the eye can focus. In the desert heat, hallucinations are common, skeptics say. But the chilling part is how consistently these apparitions are described by people who've never met and have no reason to lie. One local guide, who's led dozens of tours, refuses to enter the town after sunset. He claims to have once heard a shovel scraping just beyond the dunes, rhythmic and purposeful, despite no one being nearby. When he looked, the sand was undisturbed, but the sound continued. Kmanskop exists on the edge of memory, time, and something else, something older than the town itself. Perhaps it's the greed, the desperation, the secrecy of its diamond-stained history that has left the walls echoing with voices. Or perhaps the spirits of those who toiled beneath the desert sun still wander the dunes, forever searching for a fortune that was never truly theirs. The diamonds are gone, the people are gone, but the shadows, they remain. Number 4. Pyramiden, Norway. Pyramiden sits in the frozen silence of Norway's Svalbard archipelago, surrounded by ice, mountains, and the long shadow of a forgotten empire. Once a bustling Soviet mining town near the edge of the world, it was built to be a utopia of socialism complete with a grand cultural center, a music hall, a swimming pool, and Lenin's northernmost statue, still staring solemnly across the Arctic tundra. But in 1998, the last ship departed. The miners were gone, the lights went out, and Pyramiden was left behind, locked in eternal frost. But something stayed. Visitors brave enough to explore this Arctic ghost town during the polar night, when the sun vanishes for months, describe a stillness that feels unnatural. The cold bites deeper than usual, not just into the skin, but into the mind. There are stories of lights flickering on in buildings with no electricity, glowing faintly behind frosted windows as if someone is still home. No generators run, no wires hum. Yet there they are, squares of golden light blinking in the dark. Those who sleep overnight at the nearby outpost, now a guest lodge for adventurous travelers, tell of distant footsteps crunching on snow when no one is outside. Guides speak of hearing faint singing in Russian, a soft lullaby, or a choir echoing from the direction of the theater, where rows of wooden seats still face a curtain that hasn't moved in decades. Sometimes, guests claim to wake to the sound of a piano being played, the notes slightly out of tune, drifting through the frozen air like a memory clawing its way back to life. Inside the abandoned buildings, everything remains eerily intact. Soviet propaganda posters fade silently on the walls. Gas masks hang in locker rooms. School books sit open on desks. It's as if life simply paused. Yet people speak of a presence in these spaces. Shadowy figures glimpsed in the corner of the eyemen in dusty overalls, faces obscured by time, standing silently in doorways or watching from balconies. Some say they feel watched every moment they're inside. One researcher claimed that every time he turned around in the library, he saw a different book left open, always on the same page, a passage about death. Perhaps it's the Arctic isolation, the way time seems to slow in the endless night, that plays tricks on the senses. Or perhaps Pyramiden has become a mausoleum for the dreams that built it. The echoes of workers who gave their lives to a vision of paradise on ice. When the town died, their stories were buried beneath the permafrost, but their spirits, it seems, still wander the halls. Pyramiden may be empty in body, but in the bitter dark of winter, it breathes, and it remembers. Number 5. Centriia, Pennsylvania, USA. Centriia is a town erased not by time or war, but by fire. Beneath its cracked roads and crumbling foundations, a coal seam burns endlessly, an underground inferno that has raged since 1962. Once home to over 1,000 residents, Centriia was gradually evacuated as sinkholes opened without warning and toxic gases seeped through the ground. Today, only a few stubborn structures remain, surrounded by overgrowth and a haunting silence broken only by the occasional hiss of unseen flames below. But despite the emptiness, many believe the town is far from deserted. Visitors often describe Centriia as unnerving not because of what's there, but because of what shouldn't be. Phantom footsteps echo along Graffiti Highway, the infamous stretch of abandoned road now closed to the public, where travelers once felt invisible feet pacing behind them, never catching up. Some turn, expecting to see a fellow explorer, only to find nothing but swirling mist and cracked asphalt. Whispers ride the wind here, not the rustling of leaves or the sigh of the breeze, but voices low, indecipherable, sometimes urgent, sometimes mocking. Hikers report hearing their own names called softly from the trees, always from just out of sight. Others speak of children's laughter, thin and distant, followed by silence so complete it feels crushing. It's a place where every rustle makes you pause, and every shadow seems to shift. The burning beneath Centriia has warped the landscape into something almost post-apocalyptic. Steam escapes from the earth in sudden bursts. Trees grow at odd angles. The air, even in summer, holds a strange metallic chill. Some say the town feels like a wound that never healed open, raw, and pulsing with something just below the surface. There are darker stories, too. A local urban explorer claimed to have seen a figure emerge from a pocket of Foga man in a miner's helmet, his face obscured by soot and shadow. The figure stood motionless, staring silently, before vanishing as quickly as it appeared. Another visitor told of being followed by the sound of dragging footsteps slow, deliberate, and oddly rhythmic only to find deep, bare footprints in the soft earth where no one should have been walking. Whether it's residual energy from the trauma of displacement or something conjured by the endless fire beneath, Centriia doesn't let go easily. People leave with a sense of unease that lingers, a weight that follows them long after the road has disappeared behind them. The town may no longer burn above ground, but something within it smolders old sorrow, unspoken goodbyes, and spirits with nowhere left to go. Centriia was abandoned, but it was never emptied. And in its eerie silence, it speaks. Number 6. Humberstone and Santaora, Chile. Under the searing sun of Chile's Atacama Desert, two skeletal towns stand frozen in time, Humberstone and Santaora. Once thriving centers of nitrate mining, they boomed in the late 1800s, drawing thousands seeking fortune and a better life. But when the nitrate industry collapsed, the workers vanished, the machines fell silent, and the desert began its slow, patient reclamation. What remains are rusted factories, weather-beaten homes, and buildings slowly being swallowed by dust and silence. Yet, those who visit say the past never left. The heat here distorts the air, and with it, reality. Tourists and caretakers speak of footsteps echoing through long-abandoned dormitories, heavy and deliberate like the work boots of exhausted miners, still making their rounds. When they turn to look, there's nothing but peeling paint and broken glass. In the processing plant, rusted machinery groans at odd hours, creaking with a life of its own, as if trying to resume a shift that ended decades ago. One of the most frequently reported phenomena is the sound of hammering and tools clashing against metal. No wind, no wildlife, just the rhythmic clang of invisible labor. Guides who've worked in Humberstone for years say they've grown used to the noises, some even greet them like old co-workers. But the unease never fully fades. Doors slam shut without wind. Shadows dart along the walls of the workers' quarters. Lights flicker in buildings with no power supply. At night, if you dare to linger, the atmosphere shifts. Visitors have described a crushing sense of being watched, especially near the abandoned theater, where dusty red curtains still hang. Some claim to hear applause faint, slow, and steady, followed by the creak of footsteps crossing the stage. A few have even reported glimpsing a man in a formal black suit sitting in the audience, perfectly still, watching something that no longer exists. Santaora, the smaller of the two towns, carries its own weight. The skeleton of its refinery towers against the desert sky, stark and foreboding. Inside the tangled pipes and corroded walkways, people have seen figures moving quick blurs that vanish behind columns or descend staircases that lead nowhere. Others speak of whispers in Spanish and Quechua, too faint to understand, but too close to ignore. What makes Humberstone and Santaora so chilling isn't just their emptiness, it's the unmistakable feeling that they were never truly vacated. The towns breathe in their own way. They remember the toil, the hope, the suffering. They echo with lives cut short by accident, by illness, by the slow exhaustion of desert work. These are not ruins, but haunted relics of labor and longing, preserved by salt air and seared into the soul of the land. The miners may be gone, but their footsteps still ring across the dust. Number 7. KCO, Italy. Perched atop a crumbling cliff in southern Italy, the medieval town of Krakow looks like a memory carved into stone, a skeletal maze of towers, alleyways, and collapsed roofs silhouetted against the sky. Once a thriving village with ancient roots reaching back to the 8th century, Krakow was abandoned in waves throughout the 20th century, driven out first by landslides, then earthquakes, then floods. Nature claimed the earth beneath it, but something else, many believe, still lingers in the ruins above. Krakow doesn't greet visitors with noise or movement. It welcomes them with silencing, unnatural hush, broken only by the wind winding through narrow streets that no longer lead anywhere. But within that quiet, many report something deeper, a presence, faint but impossible to ignore. Photographers who come to capture Krakow's haunting beauty often find more than ruins in their frames. Blurred outlines of robed figures, faces peering from behind crumbling walls, light anomalies shaped like men in hoods, standing still among the stones. Locals whisper of monks, spectral and solemn, said to still walk the paths they once did centuries ago. Krakow's ancient church, now little more than an echo of its former self, is where these apparitions are most frequently seen. A flicker of movement near the altar, a shape crossing a doorway where there should be none. Some visitors describe hearing chanting low, rhythmic, almost meditative, despite the church being empty and the walls too damaged to carry sound. Those brave enough to wander the town alone speak of whispers, not carried by wind but nearer, intimate, a voice behind the ear that vanishes when turned toward. One traveler claimed he heard his name called softly 3 times from within a collapsed home. Another said she caught a fleeting glimpse of a figure staring down at her from a tower window, and when she raised her camera, it was gone. But in the photo, someone was there. Perhaps the most unnerving stories come from those who enter the underground tunnel's ancient escape routes and storerooms carved into the rock. The air grows colder, heavier. Some report feeling as if they're being followed, though no footsteps sound behind them. Flashlights dim without warning, batteries die. And always, there's that sense of being unwelcome, as if the town itself knows you don't belong. Krakow is a relic, yes, a casualty of Earth's shifting bones, but what remains is not merely architectural decay, it is memory made manifest. The town breathes with the past. Its stones carry the weight of prayer, tragedy, and departure. And in the deepest silence, when the wind pauses and the shadows grow long, Krakow stirs. Those who've seen it say it feels less like a ruin and more like a cathedral of ghosts. Number 8. Hashima Island, Battleship Island, Japan. Rising like a battleship from the sea, Hashima Island, also known as Gunkanjima, floats off the coast of Nagasaki, Japan, wrapped in a silence that feels earned. Once a booming coal mining settlement built by Mitsubishi in the late 1800s, the island packed over 5,000 workers and their families into tight, concrete apartment blocks surrounded by sea walls. It was a concrete utopia at first glance: schools, markets, even a rooftop garden. But beneath the surface was an oppressive grind of danger, sweat, and isolation. When petroleum overtook coal in the 1970s, the mine closed. Within weeks, Hashima was abandoned. Since then, only ghosts remain. Time hasn't been kind to the island. The buildings, once marvels of modernity, now slump like tired giants. Rust bleeds down their walls, rooms collapse into themselves. But it's not just decay that haunts Hashima, something more elusive, something colder. Tourists and film crews allowed brief access to the island speak of an atmosphere so heavy it presses on your chest, as if the island remembers its pain. There are whisper stories passed along by guides and investigators of ghostly miners spotted near the collapsed elevator shafts, their faces blurred, helmets intact. One man swore he saw a figure standing motionless at the top of a stairwell, arms by its side, gazing down at him without eyes. When he blinked, it was gone. Another crew member reported hearing the steady, metallic clang of a pickaxe deep within a blocked-off tunnel, a sound that faded the moment he stepped closer. Hashima's school, now skeletal and barely standing, is said to be particularly active. Visitors describe echoing children's laughter in empty classrooms, chalkboards smudged with strange markings that reappear after being wiped away. Shadows flit across shattered windows, always just outside the edge of vision. The kind of movement that makes your instincts scream before your mind can catch up. And then there are the sounds, distant, disembodied, impossible to trace. The rhythmic shuffle of boots in long-abandoned hallways, the quiet hum of machinery long dead. A deep, sighing breath in a room that should be silent. Those who've spent extended time on the island often return disturbed, describing strange dreams and an unshakable sense that they weren't alone even when surrounded by nothing but ruin. Some believe the suffering etched into the island never left. Workers died in accidents deep beneath the sea. Others, particularly during World War II, were forced laborers, many of whom never saw freedom again. It's said the island holds their anguish tightly, as if afraid the world will forget. Hashima is more than a ghost town, it's a sealed wound in the ocean. A place where steel and salt meet sorrow, and where the echoes don't fade with time, they grow louder. Number 9. Garnet, Montana, USA. Tucked high in the mountains of western Montana, Garnet is one of the best preserved ghost towns in America, but preservation hasn't quieted its past. Born during the gold rush of the 1890s, Garnet was a lively mining town filled with prospectors, saloons, and families chasing fortune in the rugged wilderness. But when the gold ran dry and fires claimed part of the town, most residents vanished, leaving behind their homes, dreams, and some say their spirits. Wander Garnet's dirt paths today and you'll feel it, a stillness too deliberate, as if the town is holding its breath. Its wooden cabins and general store remain eerily intact, dust-covered yet untouched, as if their occupants simply stepped outside and never returned. But visitors speak of hearing footsteps on porches that should be empty, boots echoing through buildings with no living soul inside. Sometimes, the footsteps are slow and steady, as if someone is pacing. Other times, they sprint racing through the silence like a man trying to outrun something unseen. Then there's the piano. More than one traveler has reported soft, haunting music drifting through the remains of Kelly's Saloon, Garnet's once lively watering hole. The tune is old, almost mournful, played by unseen hands. Even park rangers who know every nail and beam in the town admit that, sometimes, the music comes from nowhere, no wind, no wildlife, just notes hanging in the air like a ghost remembering better days. Some guests have seen figures in the windows, dressed in old-fashioned garb. A woman in a long blue dress, always turning away just before you can see her face. A man in suspenders standing behind the hotel curtains. They never interact. They just watch, or fade. One family visiting in late autumn claimed to hear a child's laughter outside their cabin just before dusk. When they opened the door, the snow was untouched. No tracks, nothing but the echo still ringing in the trees. Locals who help maintain Garnet speak of sudden cold spots, especially near the old jail and the mine entrances. Electronic equipment tends to glitch, and cameras often catch strange distortion streaks of light, orbs, and once, a clear silhouette standing on the second floor of the hotel, despite the building being locked from the outside. Unlike many ghost towns swallowed by time, Garnet feels preserved not just in structure, but in spirit. It's as though the town itself is reluctant to fade, clutching onto the lives and laughter that once filled its narrow streets. Garnet isn't a haunted shell, it's a memory still breathing, still performing its nightly rituals for anyone brave enough to witness them. Some towns die quietly. Garnet hums with the music of the past. Number 10. Kayakoy, Turkey. On a sun-bleached hillside near Turkey's southwest coast lies Kayakoy, a forgotten village of hollow stone homes, arched doorways, and empty chapels. Once a thriving Greek Orthodox community known as Levisi, it was abandoned nearly a century ago during the population exchange between Greece and Turkey. Thousands were forced to leave in haste, carrying only what they could. They left behind their homes, their churches, their lives, and perhaps something else. Today, Kayakoy feels like a town holding its breath. Its skeletal buildings, worn by wind and time, cling to the hillside like echoes of a vanished world. The streets, once filled with the sounds of laughter, footsteps, and prayers, are now filled with silence. But it's not an ordinary silence. It's heavy. It hums. Those who walk the crumbling paths often speak of hearing faint cries or soft conversations in a language they don't understand. Words that drift in and out, always just beyond clarity, as if the village is whispering to itself. Some describe a coldness that follows them through the ruins, a sensation that has nothing to do with the breeze. Others speak of hearing footsteps on gravel behind them, steady, close only to turn around and find no one there. These are not isolated stories. Locals, tour guides, even skeptics have admitted to feeling uneasy within the maze of homes, as if being watched by eyes long gone. Kayakoy's twin chapels, once the soul of the village, are especially unsettling. Inside, time has stopped. Faded icons still watch from the walls. In one, visitors have reported hearing chanting low, sorrowful voices rising from the dark corners, echoing off stone that hasn't known a congregation in decades. Some claim to have seen candlelight flickering in the windows late at night, though the chapels remain locked and untouched. One of the most persistent legends speaks of shadowy figures that wander the ruins at dusk. Not threatening, not even fully formed, just glimpses. A woman standing silently in a doorway. A child darting between houses. A man slowly walking uphill, then vanishing just before reaching the top. They never speak, they never acknowledge. They simply move through the bones of the village, repeating a journey that never ended. Kayakoy is not just abandoned, it feels paused, caught in a loop of grief and longing. This is not a place destroyed by war or nature, but by the pain of separation, of lives uprooted against their will. It's a town that didn't die naturally, it was emptied while still alive. And perhaps that's why its spirit lingers, echoing across the stones, searching for a resolution that never came. Here, among the ruined homes and quiet winds, the past is not past, it walks beside you. Ghost towns linger at the edge of time, forgotten by progress, remembered by the wind. Across continents and climates, the stories repeat. Phantom footsteps, disembodied voices, glimpses of figures where no living soul should be. These towns may be empty of life, but they pulse with presence. Some believe they are echoes, residual energies trapped by trauma, looping memories burned into stone and soil. Others speak of spirits that never moved on, tethered by unfinished business or a place they once called home. Each theory adds to the allure. Ghost towns fascinate because they offer more than crumbling walls. They offer questions. What remains when people vanish? What does the past leave behind? These places pull us in not just for their silence, but for what breaks it, the whispers, the chills, the sense that we are not alone. In ghost towns, the line between history and haunting blurs. They are relics, yes, but also reminders. That time forgets, but memory never does.